The day my 12-year-old daughter asked to stop being mine, I thought I'd never recover. But let me start from the beginning, because there's a lot you need to understand about how we got there. My wife and I split up 12 years ago. She was a stay-at-home mom who loved taking care of our home and daughter, and I supported that choice. Even though money was tight, I worked 2 jobs to make sure they had everything they needed. We weren't rich, but we ate well and had a roof over our heads. Still, it wasn't enough for my wife. She wanted luxury, designer clothes, fancy vacations, things I just couldn't provide on my salary. I found out she'd been seeing a wealthy businessman for months. The day she told me was the same day we filed for divorce. Because of my work schedule, we agreed that she'd have our daughter during the week, and I'd have her on weekends. Those weekends became my reason for living. We'd go on little adventures together, explore parks, try new foods, or sometimes just sit and talk about our week. Even though the divorce crushed me, those precious moments with my daughter made everything bearable. But things started changing slowly. First, it was just a few canceled weekends here and there. Sorry, Dad, we're going skiing with stepdad, or we have this amazing trip planned. I try not to be jealous. I told myself her stepdad was just trying to make her happy, and that was a good thing, right? The cancellations became more frequent. Our weekly visits turned into monthly ones, then just a single day a month. When we did spend time together, she wasn't really there anymore. She'd spend the whole time talking about her new PlayStation or the expensive bike her stepdad bought her. Everything we used to do together suddenly wasn't good enough. If we went to a restaurant, she'd complain that her stepdad never looked at prices before ordering. If we went to the movies, she'd mention how her stepdad had a private theater room at home. The final straw came when she ghosted me for 3 months straight. No responses to calls or texts. Desperate, I called my lawyer. He said we could sue my ex-wife for parental alienation, but warned that if my daughter testified she didn't want to see me, it could make things worse. She might even demand more child support to maintain her lifestyle. Yes, I was still paying child support despite her stepdad's wealth. Instead of going to court, my lawyer suggested we have a formal meeting to sort things out. To my surprise, my ex-wife agreed. That meeting turned out to be the worst day of my life. My daughter walked in with my ex and her new husband, looked me straight in the eye, and asked me to give up my parental rights. She wanted her stepdad to adopt her officially. I can still remember every second of that moment. The room spinning, my lawyer's voice sounding far away as he tried to explain the legal implications. I took my daughter's hand and whispered, "Baby, do you understand what you're asking? This means you won't be my daughter anymore. You can't call me Dad." She pulled her hand away and said, "Yeah, that's what I want." Then she turned to her stepdad and asked, "Once he gives up his rights, you'll adopt me, right?" He nodded, grinning like he'd won some kind of prize. I don't remember leaving the meeting. My lawyer had to drive me home because I couldn't think straight. The moment I got inside my empty house, I broke down completely. I called my parents, and they rushed over. My mom was especially heartbroken. She'd taken care of my daughter for over a year when my ex-wife was bedridden after surgery. She tried talking to my daughter, but nothing changed. My little girl was determined to become her stepdad's daughter legally. My lawyer said we could fight it, claimed they were manipulating her. But what was the point? They had endless money for court battles, and I was already stretched thin. Besides, how do you fight for someone who doesn't want you anymore? So I signed the papers. I gave up my rights to the only person who'd given my life meaning after my divorce. The next few months were a blur. I quit my second job. There was no point in working extra hours anymore. I started missing shifts at my main job until they finally fired me. I moved to a different city, spent nights sleeping in subway stations, wandering around like a ghost. I'm not proud of that time, but grief does strange things to a person. It took 2 years of therapy and countless solo trips to start feeling human again. During one of these trips, I met Sarah. She had a 5-year-old daughter named Katie. After dating for a while, we moved in together. The first time Sarah introduced me to Katie, I broke down crying. She reminded me so much of my daughter at that age. I kept my distance emotionally at first, terrified of getting hurt again. But on Katie's 12th birthday, the same age my daughter was when she left, she asked me to adopt her. The universe has a strange sense of humor sometimes. Sarah and I got married, and we now have another daughter who's 3. I thought I'd finally moved past everything, built a new life, found happiness again. Then last week, I saw a ghost. I was walking home from work when someone called out Dad. I know that voice anywhere, even after 10 years. There she was, my daughter, now 22, taller and thinner, but with the same eyes. She ran up and hugged me, saying she'd finally found me. I just stood there, feeling nothing. I have 2 daughters, I told her, but you're not one of them. Then I walked away. She followed me home. The next day, she showed up at my door with quite a story. Her mom had died, and her perfect stepdad had brought home a new woman. Suddenly, he wasn't so loving anymore. He'd cut her off financially, told her to get a job. When she kept asking for money, he threatened to disown her. Now she wanted another chance with me. I listened to everything, then asked, so what? She started begging for another opportunity, but I just closed the door in her face. I thought that would be the end of it, but she went to my mom next. She managed to convince my mom with her tears and apologies, and now my mom wants me to forgive her to reunite our family. My mom convinced me to meet with my daughter one more time. When she arrived, I pressed her for the whole truth. It all came spilling out. She'd never even finished high school. She was too busy traveling and shopping with her mom and stepdad. Then she dropped the real bombshell. Everything that happened when she was 12, including asking me to give up my rights, was part of her mom's plan to humiliate me. According to her, my ex-wife was so bitter about me not being able to buy her expensive things that she orchestrated the whole thing to shame me in front of her new, wealthy husband. I sat there listening, feeling sick as all those old wounds reopened. When she finished, I asked her straight out what she wanted from me now. I want you to accept me as your daughter again, she said. I want you to have my back. I looked at her carefully and said, okay, I'll accept you as my daughter, but all you'll get from me is love. My property, insurance, and savings are going to Katie and my little one. But I'll love you as my eldest daughter. Will that work? The change in her face was instant. She stammered for a bit before saying, yeah, but we can discuss money later, right? You're not making a will now, are you? I told her my decision was final. Katie and my youngest were already named as beneficiaries on everything, and I'd already put our house in Sarah's name. I said if she was okay with just having my love, she should bring me the old papers I signed giving up my rights, and my lawyer would prepare new ones to reverse it. She said sure, but went quiet after that. My mom offered her food, but suddenly she had somewhere urgent to be. We didn't hear from her for 2 weeks after that conversation. Then she showed up at my mom's house looking terrible, puffy eyes, dark circles, rashes all over her skin. She was crying, begging for money, claiming she'd been kicked out by a friend she'd been staying with. Said she'd sold most of her things for food. My mom, being the kind soul she is, gave her some food and $100. 3 days later, she was back with the same story. This time, when my mom asked about becoming my daughter again, she snapped, what's the point of having him as my father if he won't give me any money? He's given everything to his beggar stepchild. That's when my mom finally saw her true colors and told her never to come back. Now we're worried about my mom's safety since she lives alone after my dad passed last year. I'm staying at her house for a week, and we're looking into getting a restraining order. Sometimes I wonder if what she said about my ex-wife's plan was true. If so, my ex went too far trying to hurt me and ended up destroying our daughter's life instead. Or maybe that was just another lie to get sympathy. People tell me everyone has the right to make their own choices, and my daughter wasn't bad for choosing her stepdad over me. She was just on the wrong side of things. Maybe they're right. She made her choice 10 years ago, and now she has to live with it. As for me, I've learned that sometimes the family you choose is more real than the family you're born with. Katie and my little one might not share my blood, but they share my heart, and that's what matters most.